Welcome to another episode of AEC Unplugged. I am so grateful to have you all here. If you have ever, you know what? First, let me introduce myself. My name is Danielle Gray. I am your host. I am the director of content and knowledge resources at SMPS. And so we've been doing this AEC Unplugged for a couple of episodes now. We had our season one. Now we're into season two. This is really just the place to have intimate conversations about the industry, about trends, about insights, and really the reason why we came up with this concept is to connect. So if you are joining in, please let us know where you're coming from. Write your comment with your city and state, and maybe even if you're a part of a SMPS chapter, shout them out as well. We are happy to have you here. So if you haven't seen any of these episodes, you can always go back. We have a full lineup on our AEC Unplugged playlist on the SMPS YouTube. So it goes from our very first one. Be gentle with me for the first one. I've gotten better over time, right? No, but we've had awesome guests. We've talked about wellness. We've talked about AI. We've talked about networking, presentation skills, project management, so many different things. And today will be just the same. And I'm really excited about that. But before I go into what we're talking about today, I want to give a few announcements because I mean, what are we here to do other than obviously I'm in online learning, so I got to tell you all the good things coming, right? So a couple of things. One, if you are aware, we have a few webinars coming up. That is October. In October, we have one, it's about the interplay of business development and marketing, and that's going to be by Sierra Wharton. I'm really excited to have her speak about that. I believe that's October 17th. And then we will also be having AI and AEC marketing, which is going to be a cool introduction by Liza Hall. She is going to run through how we actually apply AI to AEC marketing. As an AEC marketer, this is actually coming from someone, one of our own. So I'm excited about that. But overall, what we're here to do is, especially when it comes to online learning and even in-person learning, is to prepare you to be your best, to be able to move up in your industry, in your firm, especially as it relates to growth professionals, that's marketers, business developers, and all of those that contribute to the growth of our firms. We also have the Pinnacle experience, and that is in person. So if you are interested in this, is a high level senior marketing, senior business development learning, please make sure to look into that. It is one of our big events, and it's going to be in Atlanta this year in November. So make sure to look into that, the Pinnacle experience. Also, we have AEC.BD. Now, I know this is a very new thing, but we have a SMPS Foundation publication that just I want to make this such a big deal. So just came out, just broke out, right? Just fresh release. Okay. I want you to make sure to look into that. That is a free resource that you have access to thanks to the SMPS Foundation. So thank you to all of you that contributed to that. And also that foundation is in partnership with Stanball Ness. So thank you for that. I love. By the way, I know you guys can't see the back end, but I don't shout out my producer enough. That's Devin Stubbs. She is so amazing. So just know it's working on the back end too. All right. So that's all my announcements for today. But let's get into the actual episode. So some of you were able to join us for Amplify AEC in Salt Lake City, which was an amazing conference. So many insights, so much great content. And what we also do is Amplify Digital. Now, that is a completely different experience. That is where we bring in this particular time, we have seven awesome awesome subject matter experts that come in and they do some pre-recorded sessions. So today what we're going to do is talk to some of them about their sessions. It's going to be a bit of a rapid fire to talk about each one of those sessions. Now, we only have four of them, but we do have seven total. So please look into Amplify Digital. It is a great way to get your learning on your own time. So with that, let's start it up. Why don't we? So our first guest is Tom Silva. He is the principal of Silva Brand. So come on in, Tom. How's it going, Tom?
Good, Danielle. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to have you here, and thank you for being a part of Amplify Digital. We were like, okay, we need some awesome speakers, and I'm glad that you were able to answer the call and come in. So something that I always like to start with, being that a lot of people within the AEC industry didn't necessarily they found their way into it. So, can you tell me about how you found your way into the AEC industry?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I came into the industry when the catchphrase was survive till 95 and make do till '02.
Okay, okay.
And so I came in at a great time, which is right in the middle of a big recession. Wall Street had just moved in. You had the REITs, the private equity funds were taking over the business, and you just had a lot of movement in the industry. So I became chief marketing officer of a big national real estate company. And it was great because we were launching construction firms, property management firms, brokerage companies, and marketing assets, everything from downtown high rises to suburban campuses from DC to California. So on the ground, grassroots, it was learning as you were doing, building the plane as you're flying it, but it was great. And so, yeah, that was kind of my entree into the industry.
Well, I'm sure it seems like building the plane while flying it, you learn a lot, and
Hmm.
also it was probably a little terrifying at
Oh yeah,
times too. So,
oh yeah, for
but it
sure.
builds character, right? It builds
Yep,
character.
it
So,
does.
now you led a session within Amplify Digital called "Designing Your Collateral for Success." So, without going into everything that you talk about, what are some common pitfalls that you see AEC firms make when they're designing their collateral, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, let me just set the table by, look at the AEC industry. So I don't know if you know these numbers, Daniel. It's really interesting. 700,000 firms in the AEC space. 80% of them have less than 10 employees. Only 2% have over 100 employees. The reason I mention that is think about it, a lot of small businesses, a lot of
Right.
solopreneurs, not necessarily with marketing teams, not necessarily having a lot of resources to spend on design.
Wow.
And so part of the session is about getting companies to get to minimum viable collateral. What do you need to promote your products and services? Tell us who your audience is. And then, more importantly, tell us what's unique about your company. And so that's what the session's about. But to answer your question, which is excellent, one of the things that I see oftentimes it's what the biggest problem is density in this space. So way too much content in way too little space. You know what I'm talking about. I can see your expression. But as an example, the rule of thumb is you should have 72 characters per line of content. I see 150 characters, and you have these dense documents that happen. And of course, you're speaking to a really, really stressed, very busy audience. They don't have time to delve into all of that. Second issue is the lack of organization. Things just cluttered all over the place, from your H1 headers, subheads to body copy, and then all of your different visual elements. There's no rhyme or reason to the way these things are organized.
Right.
What's the problem with that is you're not giving this very busy audience you're trying to reach a skim path, a way of getting through the content where they can get the most important bits of information and understand what it is you do, but without expending the time to go through every single thing. And then the third is the lack of quality imagery and photography. So you know this, Danielle. I mean, we're on an online show right now.
Mhm.
Everybody's got the smartphone. I have a 48 megapixel camera on my iPhone. We're incredibly sophisticated when it comes to visual imagery. Putting out substandard stock photos or really, really poorly lit custom photography makes you look really unprofessional. And so I see a lot of firms really missing the boat in terms of visual storytelling in their collateral. And so that's a huge opportunity for them to be able to really raise the bar on what they're doing.
That's so one, I had not heard of that. What you were saying at the beginning about how many firms are right in that middle ground. So that's so interesting. And I have to agree. I've seen some pretty dense material. That's a great word, dense material. So thank you for sharing that. Before you go, we're gonna go to the next Amplify speaker. But before you go, can you share some words of wisdom with those that are watching here?
Yeah. So one of the big things I would advise, and I say this, I go through this in the session, we do live design on the session where we take existing websites from great AEC firms and we redesign them live so you can see how we look at things. My biggest thing is what you should be designing on a grid. The grid is something that all of you have in InDesign, Photoshop, whatever it is, the system you're using. Grid lines are like the lines you had in your when you were going to school. They're the lines that you color within. So think of it as two rows, two columns across. You can use that to orient and lock all of your copy, headers, subheads, body copy to those lines to create a sense of organization. The places where those lines intersect are the best places for key data points, key photography. This is coming out of what they call the Swiss International style of design, but you don't need to know that. All you need to know is if you design on a grid, you're going to find that your collateral instantly gets more compelling. There's more energy to it. And most importantly, you're going to compel people to read it. So I think this is a step that a lot of people miss. And so the many different types of design grids, which we go through on the session. But I would say definitely deploy the grid because it is the absolute bedrock of all good graphic design. And then from there grows, I think, the sort of like aesthetics of your brand. And then I think that will really, really start to get you moving in the right direction towards minimum viable collateral.
Thank you so much, Tom. That grid lines, I mean, so simple, but also so key. So thank you so much for joining. And we'll bring on the next person.
My
But
pleasure. Thanks.
before, thank you. Before we do that, I do want to reach or shout out our audience. So we've got Tampa, Baltimore. Okay, we got Tampa Bay, SMPS Tampa Bay, SMPS Utah, Raleigh, and Myrtle Beach. So thank you all so much for joining. All right, so we're going to the next one. It's so interesting how this really segues very nicely. So the next guest we have on is Danielle DeForio, the account and project director. Nice name, Danielle. I was waiting for this moment, actually.
You did great. I know I tried to trip you up on that.
No, it was, when I first emailed you, and it's always fun having somebody else with the same name. So I'm probably going to just say your name so many times today. So thank you, Danielle, for being here.
Oh, it's nice to officially meet you too.
Yes, absolutely. So, just like I was talking about with Tom, I think it's always interesting. I always lead in with my guests about how you made your way into the AEC industry. So, can you share a story about how you got into this industry?
Sure. I think, like many people, how I ended up in AEC is fairly random. So I got connected with Clockwork Design Group through a recruiter. And I've been with Clockwork for over 11 years now, and they introduced me to AEC and SMPS. I actually became an SMPS member within my first 6 months of being at Clockwork. So we focus on working with professional service firms. So AEC is a really large portion of that. Yeah, so it's been my honor to be a longtime SMPS member now. I've been to many conferences, been invited to speak. Our organization has won awards both in national and local competitions for branding and websites.
That's awesome. I know I see clockwork very much everywhere. So very cool. So you lead the session on Amplify Digital, the
Mhm.
future of AEC websites, which I thought was just so intriguing. Just to say, like, oh, the future, right? So, what technological advancements, trends, or strategies that are reshaping how we build AEC websites?
Yeah, so I really focused in on looking at what is in and what's out, but also what's normal in the industry and what is next. So I broke it down into 8 different topics. And obviously, I can't get through all of those today. So I
No,
might
sure.
just mention a few in passing.
Mhm.
But the first thing I talked about is new strategies when it comes to homepage designs to really differentiate yourself and position your firm. It's very normal to have project visuals up at the top of the page, but everyone can do that. So there's some new strategies that are emerging, and I show lots of examples of that. A lot of my presentation is just looking at other websites, looking at what we're doing at Clockwork as well as what I'm seeing a lot of the largest AEC firms doing. So it was a fun little research
Yeah,
project.
I bet.
Um, Tying into what Tom was saying about making your content more engaging, that very much applies on your website as well. So having more flexible pages and pairing words and visuals together to tell a story that is more engaging. No one wants to read just paragraph after paragraph of
Right.
text. They want to scan. Some people might read it, but again, you need those quick takeaways that makes it more engaging. So you need that flexibility. But with that word of caution, you don't want to be managing everything on a per page basis. So
Mhm.
I also talk about the need for what we call smart AEC websites that really streamline your site management. So using things that are database driven or dynamic related content so it keeps your site up to date without you having to manually change everything across the whole site. That's just not sustainable for our
Right.
marketing team, especially as you keep adding new content to your site. Then I also talk more specifically about project pages. Again, more impactful storytelling, focusing on benefits, again, pairing words and visuals, having headlines. But I also found some really cool interactive features that firms are starting to add when appropriate. So, video and image rollovers, before and after sliders, 360 views, even animated GIFs. Like there's so much that you
Mm,
can do to make your project page more interesting and engaging. Another tech trend is advances in site-wide search. There's, again, so much more that you can do to make the search on your site more robust. So there's things called type ahead or predictive search. So it feels more Google-like, and
mhm.
it makes it a lot easier for people to find what they're looking for, as well as adding advanced filtering capabilities across different sections and your whole site. I also focus in on locations. Locations used to be kind of an afterthought on websites, but now a lot of the larger firms are adding geolocation features so that it knows where you are. So when I go to a website and they have a Boston office, they're going to serve me the Boston office
Oh,
content.
wow.
So
Okay.
there's a lot that you can do.
Mhm.
I'm also seeing location pages that feel more like home pages, knowing that a lot of people are ending up on those pages first, and they often have a careers spin on it because recruiting is really tight.
Right,
It's competitive, so anywhere to get an edge. So those location pages are not something to snooze on.
right.
Um, then also just looking at having a more integrated tech stack. Again, going back to ease of site management, saving marketing staff's time because they're busy. We know
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
And then compliance considerations.
Mhm.
So there's just a lack of awareness still. I think that people don't realize that their website should be accessible to everyone. ADA does impact websites now. So your website should be accessible to everyone. And privacy considerations. A lot of states are passing comprehensive data privacy regulations. So knowing how that impacts your website as well.
Danielle, my mind is blown. I wonder if anybody else, this is so good. Especially the fact that, you are sharing also people can see the website. You can look at it. I know I'm very visual, so being able to see that, but I mean, from the accessibility to the location you really just blew my mind. So I am really excited. I hope that, you all will be able to jump in. And before you go, I want to just give you the opportunity. Any words of wisdom that you'd like to share with those that are watching?
Sure. So obviously, I hope you get lots of ideas of things that you can do with your website. My recommendation is make sure that your website is on a really solid content management system that you can then scale your site and add new things, and it's easy to manage, because then you can make incremental improvements and your site can last for many, many years. You want to get out of this boom and bust cycle where you do a new website, you love it, and then you hate it. And then, start again, the new website, and then you hate it. You want to just make incremental improvements, which is going to be so much more sustainable for your team to manage, and you're going to be happier with your site for a much longer period of time.
That is so awesome. So thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you for sharing, and please, Amplify Digital, it's all included, everybody that we're talking to. So thank you, Danielle, for joining. All right, so we are moving right along to our next guest. We have Dax Castro, accessibility subject matter expert. How's it going, Dax? I got you on mute. I think you're on mute here.
Did it. That was my fault.
No,
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thank you for joining. And, you have such an interesting subject. And before I get into it, just like I've asked everybody, how the heck did you get into AEC?
So I started working way back in AEC as a marketing coordinator, and just really fell in love with InDesign and the pursuit and the challenge of winning and all of that. And in fact, I won social media marketing award for Amplify. It was a Build Business back then.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but just really fell in love with the community. And even though I'm not formally at an AEC company currently, the company I work for, we deal a lot with helping AEC companies make their content accessible. So yeah, I worked on the high-speed rail project as part of the AEC community. So
wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing. So you lead the session demystifying document accessibility. So can you define what document accessibility is, and why is it important for us as AEC professionals to know about it?
Well, what's interesting is the federal government, accessibility has been a rule or a law since 2015. But then in 17, they said, okay, no, we really want you to follow these rules. And then in 19, they said, no, really, we mean it. And the DOJ just put out a new ruling that now everybody's scrambling again. But the basics of document accessibility or accessibility, digital accessibility, is making sure that people can understand your content. And whether I'm colorblind or I have low vision or I'm blind or I'm deaf, can I see the content, understand the meeting? And Tom talked about heading structure in website, in the design. And that's so important. If you have good heading structure in your content, then people can skim regardless of whether they can see or, use a different method to understand the information. And accessibility is really just about access.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And I'm really looking forward to people learning more about what you have by watching your session within Amplify Digital. So before you go, what's some words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience here?
Accessibility is not hard. The problem is start at the end. We say, we'll make a document and then we'll make it accessible. The trick is Start with accessibility. Use styles in your InDesign and Word documents. Make sure that your content is well laid out, that you use a good color scheme that has good contrast, and then it's really 80% accessible at the end. And maybe you've got a few tweaks and changes here and there, but when you go, I'm going to design it and then make it accessible, it becomes this overwhelming elephant that you just don't know how to eat.
Wow, that is a paradigm shift. What you just said, it's not hard. We're just change the flow. So thank you so much, Dax. That is so inspiring and actually makes it feel a lot more digestible to take on. So thank you so much for being here on AEC Unplugged. All right, so we're moving right along to our next and final guest today, Susan Young. She is an award-winning communications and pursuits trainer and keynote speaker within the AEC industry. Hello, Susan. How are you?
Oh, I am just dandy. How are you, Danielle?
Good. I'm excited to have you on today, and thank you for being here. So, like I asked, it's my signature question. How did you find your way in the AEC industry?
Well, there was an accident. So everything to me is a story. I've been a storyteller for 40 years. So here's what happened. I was a radio news reporter for 10 years and co-managed Governor Christie Whitman's Office of Radio and Television in New Jersey and worked for a statewide nonprofit. And for those 20 years or so, I attended hundreds of public hearings and protests and council meetings and things about, run by AEC presentations about, should we build the mall? Should we build a landfill? Should we knock down the school? Should we extend the highway? And most of the presentations that I saw were painful. Some were powerful, but not many. And I thought, wow, they really need some communication help, because the folks who are in engineering are the ones who are kind of looking at their shoes and the eye contact and packing all the slides. You talk about not being able to,
Right.
It's too text heavy. So 24 years ago, I started my company called Get in Front Communications. And what I did was I set out to really work with AEC. And that's what we do right now is, the training and the communication and the pursuits, because it's all connected. Of how to articulate and feel confident in sound bites, what we call in radio, little nuggets of how do you not only grab people's attention, but keep their attention. And the biggest thing that I learned was about being curious. And that's what carries over so beautifully into AEC. And as a street reporter, I had to be curious. I had to uncover things and ask good questions and be a good listener and be life's little observer. And that's what I teach and coach on and keynote on how AEC marketers and project managers who didn't sign up to be marketers, right? But here we are, bringing them into seller doer meetings. And how do they share their expertise and message, the right words in the right order at the right time for the right people?
Oh, so good. Well said. So, you lead a session within the Amplify Digital called "How Brain Science in Meetings Improves Productivity and Communication." So, when we initially talked about this concept, you brought up the acronym NLP. So, for the audience members like myself that did not know what that even meant, can you tell us what that means and why we should be aware of it?
It's really fascinating. And I'll tell you, after 40 years, for me to still be so intrigued by this, it's incredible. It's neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And it's a 50-year-old, it's brain science, and it's scientifically proven. It's a method of how we process, it's a psychology, sales, interrelationship of our experiences. And, I talk about storytelling, but it's the story that we tell ourselves in our heads, that internal negative self-talk and the stories that we believe or have come to believe. She's not good in math. She doesn't drive. She's not a good bowler, or whatever you overheard when you were, 6, 7, 8 years old, that we still carry with us as adults that don't empower and serve us well. So when I've been studying NLP and got certified in it years ago, but 30 years later, it's completely changed my life and it's huge in business. You know, it's used globally by leaders and executives and athletes. It's about how we make sense of our world and the self-awareness that we need to become more empowering, to develop that flexibility we need in relationships, to be able to negotiate, to be able to influence and build consensus in a friendly and positive way, to build a rapport and connect with people on deeper levels so that we have meaningful relationships. It's phenomenal.
No, it sounds like it. I think it when you started talking about the internal conversations too, I mean, I could see how you could have a full session on this. So you know, we're doing our quick hit. So I before we go, I would love for you to share some words of wisdom with the group here today.
I would say be curious and know that you are worthy of sharing your story. When you retell yourself and rewrite, you have the power to rewrite your own internal story. Because if you don't believe yourself first, you cannot go into the marketplace expecting somebody else to believe you. So you are the message. Work on the internal part first and watch yourself succeed to so many new possibilities and potential.
I got chills. Thank you so much, Susan. That was great. So look, thank you for everyone, all of our Amplify digital speakers. That was just a little piece. Okay, you have 7 full hours of Amplify digital speakers. Now, here's the cool part: if you attended Amplify AEC in person with a full registration, you have access. Log into the online learning portal. You have access to Amplify Digital. If you did not go, that is okay. You can still purchase Amplify Digital. Again, you saw just a little taste of these awesome speakers, and I hope you take the time to look into that. So look, we have Amplify Digital. We've got upcoming webinars that I spoke about before. We've got the Pinnacle Experience in person in November. And also, as a side note, we also have a DEI certificate program that I highly encourage you to look into as well. So look, this has been an amazing episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm learning, and I hope you get some of that learning too. And like I like to close, I hope if this doesn't inspire you to do something different, I hope it inspires you to be something different. So thank you so much for being here with me on AEC Unplugged, and I will see you next time. September 25th, we will be talking about AEC Insights. See you soon. Thanks.